Hit the like, share the show. It's the greatest live stream on the internets, bar none. Now, I'm a running a little bit late today. Not much. I'm very proud of myself, but you know I'm a bookish kind of a fella, and I gotta say, let's see, we drop into here. Is this one? Okay, here we go. You can't just drop in here on me, yeah, and not expect me. You can't dump a bunch of stuff. Hold on, let me see if I can find that. Is that it there? 3 more pages now? Yes, that's it. Okay. You can't dump something like this on me and then expect me not to just dive in 100%. Let me grow this out. Sorry. It's off. I don't like that it's off center. Drives me crazy. All right. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the latest filing that you might be seeing around the interwebs right now of Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump. And a lot of what you're hearing from it is in the first 30 pages, because what you'll see is news people will get a hold of this, as they should, and they will start reading it, and they will hand it to their legal expert, the Glenn Kirschners of their group of people, as it were, to peruse. Then they will have their own attorneys at the actual network go through and make sure that if they read something from it, it won't get them in trouble, and they have to vet a bunch of things. So they end up being behind where effectively social media will deal with a lot of this shit in a way that, social media companies and the like don't have to deal with it. They don't, people posting online don't have to deal with throwing this shit in there because, like myself, because we don't have legal teams. And the expectation from us, because we're not, giant news organizations, is that if we get it wrong, this is shit. It's the internet. What are you going to do? Fuck off. But if you're even Newsmax or The Blaze, you got to run it past the lawyers. And technically, if you're Newsmax or The Blaze, you don't want to show any of this shit. But you know what I'm talking about. This would be true, I suppose, of what? Hunter Biden stuff. Something like that. Right? Okay. All right. So let's, the fun part is jump ahead past where a bunch of stuff, like I think about as far as people got was page 13, because I'm seeing a bunch of stuff in here about, like, on November 11th, meeting among the defendant, Pence, campaign staff, and some White House staff, during which Pence asked when most of the lawsuits would be resolved. When does this come to a head? And the campaign staff responded, week after Thanksgiving. November 12th meeting, blah, blah, blah. And there was a thing where he contacted him as a friend and said that they projected Biden to win. They're going to go with it. Just let it go, essentially. You took a dying political party and gave it a new lease on life. He was like trying to kiss his ass and get him proud of his loss. And obviously Trump's not buying it. So lots of reference stuff in here. This, like, you can just see, this is statements made by the Georgia, Secretary of State, press conferences about every single one of these stupid fucking lawsuits that they put forward when they lost, right? So let's, if we can, let's do what we can do. Here you go. Jump down to the tail end where the rest of these organizations won't get to yet and kind of look around. We'll just kind of root around in it, if you don't mind. And by the way, hit that like, share the show. Hi, chat room. How are you doing? Good to see you. Share the show out there, all that kind of stuff. Hit some, punch some buttons and add some emojis and that kind of stuff. Oh, look, see, that's what happens. Thank you. Level 1 hype train. Let's try and get can we get a level 4 hype train today? I don't know. Twitch, what do you got in you? You got a level 4 hype train in you today? I mean, 65 page superseding indictment style list of evidence should be worth a hype train or two. So the superseding indictment, I'm fine, alleges that the defendant, Donald John Trump, Repeated and widely disseminated false claims of election fraud. See example, superseding indictment, ECF number 226-1214. One of the ways he did this was by tweet, constantly day in and day out. Examples of the kinds of tweets that the government intends to use at trial are set forth throughout Section 1, in which the defendant falsely claimed victory and outcome determinative election fraud in targeted states. There's the superseding indictment page. These are the pages and the things. These kinds of tweets all shared common internal characteristics that establish their unofficial nature. That's, again, this is a big part of this. This is not official duties. This is his campaign. This is him trying to, salvage his campaign, not his presidency. And there's a very big difference between the two. The presidency is lost. The courts have said so. Time to move on. The campaign to be the president goes on. These kinds of tweets all shared common. The defendant used language of a candidate when he spoke in terms of his personal electoral victory. I win or we win. He divided his audience between personal allies who supported his election challenges and enemies who did not, dismissing the latter as rhinos or the Democrats, which is what makes it partisan and political. You fucking dum-dum, Donald Trump. And he focused only on fraud claims that would affect his own election and was fixated on his own margin of victory. Now, that's the other part he has. We've always said all along these areas, especially with Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk, right? They, if there was all this fraud, how the fuck did she get elected? And if it was a fraudulent election, how can she in good conscience take her oath of office when she doesn't trust the outcome of the election? Right? Okay. Tweets and retweets attacking those speaking the truth about the election. On multiple occasions, he issued a tweet or retweet an agent's tweet in order to attack individuals who had spoken out publicly to defend the integrity of the 2020 election. These included instances on November 11th. The defendant attacked Philadelphia City Commissioner so-and-so, when we know that, after he dispelled fraud claims in a television interview that the defendant saw. On November 29th, the defendant issued a tweet attacking blank when he appeared on 60 Minutes. I mean, you could kind of look at November 29th and see who was on 60 Minutes. It's a little weird. For a public announcement, I mean, this is letter law, kids, but it's a little, yeah. For a public announcement, the defendant had not presented Arizona legislators with any evidence of outcome determinative fraud, and the Arizona legislator could not overturn the election based on unsupported theories of fraud. Again, on December 6th, the defendant retweeted a post by his agent. This would be one of his campaign agents, is probably Scavino or Brad Parscale or any of those assholes, labeling 4 Republican state legislators cowards after they issued a public announcement that they could not overturn the popular vote and appoint their own electors. A lot of the stuff we know from the Jan 6 hearings. It's pretty sweet shit, though, I gotta say, overall. Glenn Kirshner called this loophole. Oh, yeah. He called the whole thing loophole. On November 29th, when 60 Minutes aired an interview with former CISA director defending the integrity of the election, the defendant tweeted an attack on the television program and him and claimed that the 2020 election was probably our least secure ever, which is just dumb because he was basically saying, they were like, this is our most secure election ever because they were paying so much attention to it. Everybody was in their fucking seat because nobody was leaving because of COVID, and they had more paper ballots than any other time in history. The same thing is true now. Like, elections from 2020 forward, we have more paper ballots involved in any of this shit than at any other time in history because of the nature of mail-in, but also because the mail-in ballots from 2020 created a system where they now have the infrastructure to have paper ballots for everything in case there's an emergency like Hurricane Helene, for example, right? Okay. Which, by the way, they're talking about how Hurricane Helene is going to affect a bunch of places. Well, guess what fucking kind of counties those are? Red counties full of Trump voters. And do you think that, Democrats are going to try and keep those fuckers from voting? Do you think they're going to go, these people are in the wrong precinct, kick these fuckers out? Think anybody's going to do that? No. And they shouldn't. And as a Democrat, I would be horrified if my party engaged in any of that kind of shit, and we will not let it happen. Meanwhile, if it was a city and they got hit by lightning every fucking electrical pole in the city got hit by lightning at the same time and shut the whole thing down. They go, well, I guess Chicago doesn't get to vote this time. I guess Detroit's out of luck, right? Okay. Let's go. Okay. This is we have specifically at his real Donald Trump account to discuss campaign litigation. He wrote, "We have some big things happening in our various litigations on the election hoax. Everybody knows it was rigged. They know Biden didn't get more votes from the black community than Obama, and certainly didn't get 80 million votes. Look what happened in Detroit, Philadelphia, plus." And within 20 minutes of the tweet, the defendant issued another tweet about 60 minutes, this time asking whether the fake news program was paying attention to a tweet that the defendant linked to by a private citizen. So he's like trying to share this shit. Level 5 hype train. Look at that. Thanks, Twitch. You guys. Hey, if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe on Twitch and it doesn't cost you a dime. I'm just saying. And rhyming. All right. The defendant's tweet regarding 60 Minutes was unofficial. The campaign litigation-focused tweets surrounding it demonstrate that the us whom the defendant claims 60 Minutes never consulted was the defendant's campaign, not his administration. Super fucking important. And then all the references there you go. Let's see. And oh, by the way, there's a lot. The best part of this whole thing, I think, in perusing it, and again, I'm going to dive into it more. By the way, yes, please subscribe to the Hal Sparks podcast, Mega Worldwide. If you like the audio, if you like the dulcet tones of my voice, telling you the funnies, and making fun of the peoples, it helps me out. So a lot of this is a shit ton of footnotes in this, and the footnotes in it are particularly fantastic because they reference all the failed election litigation that they did, all the court cases and why they got kicked out, and you'll be shocked to know that none of it was simply about standing and that nobody looked at the evidence. Just for the record. Almost all of it got kicked out with the exception of like the Texas lawsuit that was trying to sue another state into electing the person that they liked, which is just fucking stupid. That was the big case that he signed on that Walls referenced in the debate last night. The rest of them are like, nah, they did a count and a recount, and you ordered a recount, and we ordered a recount based on it, and then it turned out to be nothing. Fuck off. Right. Yeah. Let's see. A week later, this is the thing. A week later, the court dismissed the lawsuit, stating the plaintiffs essentially asked the court for perhaps the most extraordinary relief ever sought in any federal court in connection with an election. They want this court to substitute its judgment for that of 2.5 million Georgia voters who voted for Joe Biden, and I am unwilling to do. That was the Pearson, like, we're not going to just kick out the fucking votes, motherfucker. Yeah. President Trump is back on the campaign trail today. America is the best country on earth, and real Donald Trump is the greatest president. That was one of the things he retweeted. So that sounds, I don't know about you, that sounds like a campaign retweet to me. Yeah. December 6th, the defendant also retweeted by tweet an agent of the defendant who was working closely with somebody. Tweet attacked 4 Pennsylvania legislators who issued a public statement that they could not overturn the elections. It's another thing. They did this in Michigan. They do it in a bunch of places where the Republicans on there wouldn't like throw out the fucking election. They would shit on them or threaten them and basically put a target on their back, hoping some maggot would scare the shit out of them. And it didn't work. Thank God. Wisconsin governor signed a certificate of final determination confirming that Biden had won the state. And based on the resolution by the Wisconsin Supreme Court of the lawsuit in Biden's favor, the defendant took to Twitter to attack the justice who had written the majority opinion that ruled against him. The defendant claimed falsely that he had endorsed Biden, I guess, in his election for the I see. That Trump had endorsed this person for his election in the Supreme Court and implied that the endorsement had caused the person to win. Oh, so Biden did this? Whatever. Anyways, the defendant encouraged Republicans in Wisconsin to go to their state legislators and overturn this ridiculous state election. We won in a landslide. Now that is not that's first of all, that's ridiculous and incendiary and an act of stochastic terrorism by a campaign. From a president, it's fucking illegal. Like, beyond the separation of powers, like, of all the things, hey, Republicans, didn't you used to give a fuck about states' rights? And this motherfucker is basically sending his supporters as a minor army to go to their state legislators and overturn this ridiculous state election. How the fuck do you do that? Fucking hog tie him? What are you talking about? Right? That's super personal, and it's fucking terrorism. It's a threat of violence. We won in a landslide. Landslide, right down. The defendant launched the public attacks both as a candidate for office and as a party leader. So, again, because he's trying to claim control of the Republican Party and force Republicans to do shit that he wants, he kept like beating his chest that he's the head of the Republican Party, which is what made it a campaign instruction, made it a campaign tweet, made it a campaign act, because he's fucking dumb. Thank God. All right. So stupid. And then, I mean, by the way, this goes through a fairly, direct timeline, right? The context and content of these tweets established they were unofficial. Now, this is a big part, like I said, of the whole thing. This word right here, unofficial. You're going to see that a lot in this filing if you peruse it. And that's very important to his case. Like, okay, if he can have immunity for every official act he did as president. I don't give a fuck. We're only dealing with unofficial acts. And he broke plenty of fucking laws. I don't need any help. You can kick out a bunch of shit, and we still got a ton of stuff to try him on. Knock yourself the fuck out. Yeah. Defendant was using the political pressure of his supporters and social media followers to convince Pence to take an action to benefit the defendant as a candidate and help him overturn the results of the election. Yeah, and he sent the fucking mob to hang him. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states and we win. Okay, no you don't, you dumb motherfucker. Even if all of this delay had happened, he still would stop being president on January 20th. We would have a constitutional crisis, and Pelosi would have been the temporary president until we worked it out. You don't get to fucking stay president in a contested election. It's not base. You don't get dibs. You fucking moron. As of that date, your term is over until you've been established to get another term. And if the election's up in the air, you don't go, well, I'm already in here. My furniture's here. So squatters' rights. Get the fuck out of here. No. And you certainly wouldn't be able to pass any laws or order anybody around because you're not the fucking president anymore. This didn't happen midterm. So on January 20th of 2021, Donald Trump would have ceased to be the president in a disputed election, period. Period. Nancy Pelosi would have been the acting president of the United States, you dumb motherfucker. Because the top two people on the ticket would officially have not been declared the winners and couldn't be sworn in for a second term. And so this idea that like all you have to do is send it back to the states and we win, all it would have done is delay it. If it delayed it past the 20th, he's still going to fucking lose because they can revamp and re-rig this all they want to, but he's still fucking lost. And he's going to lose this time, and he's going to be ugly about it, but he's also going to kind of give up. I will say there will be no second January 6th. First of all, he doesn't have control of the military, and he can't try his little plan to get a bunch of like sycophant National Guard people to circle the city this time and rush in there. It's not going to fucking happen because, again, he's not in office. Biden is, and apparently Biden has immunity to do whatever the fuck he wants. So welcome to like maggots being microwaved by Jewish space lasers from space, I guess, because why the fuck would you argue that the president has absolute immunity for anything they do while in office when you're not in office? Right? I mean, you can argue for your belief, which is just fucking stupid, so that you can maybe go, like, ignorance of the law, Your Honor. I had no idea I was committing a crime because I was president at the time and I thought I could do a bunch of shit and nobody told me otherwise and nobody's ever tested it. So it's untested law. Maybe that's the best you can do. But you don't get your own fucking Supreme Court to go, yeah, if Biden wants to kill me, he can basically do it. What kind of an asshole It's like the stupidest. I mean, of all the dumb plans, let me run this by you as a potential. Okay, Trumpies, maggots, work with me on this. Let's say, for the sake of argument, and he doesn't even have to be right, because the Supreme Court says you can't even question the fucking motives of the president in this situation. And Biden's on his way out. He's, as of January 20th of next year, he's not president anymore, no matter what the fuck happens, right? So he's gone after this. So, and you guys don't want to impeach anybody after they've left office, so I don't know what the fuck you think you're going to do to fix this. And if you can even bring it, if you have enough people in the House and Senate anyways to follow through, which I don't think you do. But let's just say, let's go with this. Let's say that Joe Biden worries that 51% of the electorate are women, and as the president of a representative democracy, he has a clear moral and presidential obligation as a public servant to make sure that an adjudicated rapist does not have control of women's rights. And the only way for him to make that happen is have the CIA sprinkle some goodbye dust on a fucking Big Mac and shove it in Trump's face. Okay? Not something dumb and ham-handed like some idiot with a rusty MK-47, but something sneaky and believable. A simple heart attack or whatever, right? And knowing full well that maggots will probably blame it on the fucking vaccine. And Biden does this because he sees Trump as a clear and present danger to women's rights. I'm not advocating this. I am not saying it's going to happen. I'm telling you how fucking stupid Donald Trump is and his belief about what a president can do. And Trump goes to the sweet by and by, and no one can ever charge Biden because you can't question why he did it, and what he did is none of your fucking business because he was president. Right? And who the fuck? And by the way, by Trump's telling, Biden is the biggest, most monstrous villain that has ever lived. Head of a huge crime family, sprawling, connected with China and Russia and all these things. So let me get this straight. You think that guy, who you believe is tied to the Chinese and the Russian government and is going after you and blah, 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 and is the most corrupt ever, should have total immunity for anything he does as president, including dusting off his own political opponent, which is exactly what your own lawyers argued, that Joe Biden should have the ability to shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and hand the gun to somebody and go, my presidential duties are done for the day, I'm going to the beach. What kind of an asshole argues for that kind of power for anyone, much less your political opponent, who you want us to believe is the most criminal person that's ever existed? The filing, the download of the filing. Hold on, let me copy this for you. This is the link if you want to look at this. I'm going to put it in here. Somebody put it in there earlier too, but I'll put it in there as well. Thank you. So this it's moronic. Why would you hand, like, if you're wearing a bulletproof vest and you're holding the gun, why would you hand the gun to someone else and take off the bulletproof vest? It's so stupid. And the reason why he can say this is because it's never going to fucking happen. Biden is not going to kill Trump. Trump might keel over. That's entirely possible. And there will be, conspiracy theories up and down. Everybody will argue that he was according to Ronnie Jackson / Johnson, he's going to live forever. And if he just if he didn't eat junk food, he'd live to be 200 years old. He's the healthiest somebody ever, even though he's on a hard fade and he sounds like a complete fucking lunatic these days. He's never been clearer, never been stronger, never been brighter, never been more powerful, virile, and less saggy. Ugh. Right? There'll always be a conspiracy about it. But Biden's not going to do it. As a Catholic and a Biden, he's not going to do it. And Trump knows this. That's why he can fucking say this shit. He knows it's not going to happen. And by the way, Biden, as an old man, is going to enjoy outliving Trump. Biden's too busy admiring the legacy of Jimmy Carter. Okay, so back to where we were. And this asshole's stupid idea. And again, this is why he can talk shit like this. Because he knows there's not going to be blowback. He knows, first of all, well, and partly why does he know this? And chat room, this is a good question to bring up with you guys. Why does Trump know that Biden's not going to snuff him? Right? Why does he feel that that's a positive? I mean, I'm sure his paranoid fucking coked out sons it's occurred to them because they're gross and they would shoot a stake down animal on a safari. Right? So they'll kill something that doesn't deserve it. So why wouldn't somebody else? Right? It's easy to project it. Partly is because Donald Trump is a fucking wuss. He talks a big game, but he's an absolute bitch. When it comes down to it, he's got nothing. Nothing. My mic is low, you're saying, a little bit? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll bring it up a little bit. How about that? Is that better? And so he projects that onto other people. He projects that onto Biden and other people, like, that would be scary if you did that. That's why he admires people like Putin, because they can do it and he can't. Yeah. Biden has morals. He's not going to snuff fucking Trump. But let's do the softball version of that, shall we? Chat room, walk with me. Maggots, come here. Trolls, get in here for a second. Yeah, settle down. Let me talk to you. Let me get so we've already worked out that potential, Zapruder film moment that's not going to happen, and Trump knows it's not going to fucking happen, right? So what's the other option? Well, let's say Joe Biden knows that Donald Trump is a threat to the health and safety of 51% of the electorate and their daughters. And and within his responsibility as a president, he has a duty to make sure, that an adjudicated rapist doesn't get control of women's rights again. And he can do that by any number of things, election related stuff. And this goes to the whole thing about Trump saying they cheated in the election. Like, motherfucker, you were president when that happened. How the fuck are you going to beat them when they run the place? Again, it's not going to happen. But this is it. If Biden, according to Trump, if Biden chose to rig the election to guarantee that Trump can't be president, he should have total immunity to do that, and nobody can ask him why. That's the funny part to me. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, here you go. This is the part where we get closer to, whoops, hold on. I want to go to me. There you go. This is the part where we go to, this is page 140. This is where Trump starts getting really mad that Pence isn't playing ball. And this is the really fucked up part. This is, you guys remember how, like, Pence always looked at Trump like he was like Pence was a flower and the sun shined out of Trump's ass. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I have never seen a more sycophantic, supportive, ass-kissing VP in my fucking life. Nobody has. It was cringy as shit every fucking day. Just this fawning, like, my God, how can he get any more beautiful and strong? Like, all the time. It was so fucking embarrassing. It was weird. It was, I mean, it was borderline homoerotic half the time. And the other half the time, it was, you couldn't even understand why a guy who's an alleged evangelical or Christian would project good traits that he himself allegedly believes onto this fucking piglet, right? So, Jesus. And then, in the end, to just try and do the normal when it's obvious Trump lost. Just try and do the normal. And what does Trump do? Fucking almost gets him killed. So here's, and this is, the defendant's actions acknowledged in the hours leading up to the tweet provided helpful context. The evening before, on January 5th, the defendant had dictated a tweet to more than likely Dan Scavino as he listened to angry crowds gather outside the White House. And this is his people. That tweet shows that the defendant understood that his gathering supporters who were angry and believed his false claims that the election had been stolen were a powder keg. At 5:05 p.m., he tweeted, "Washington is being inundated with people who don't want to see an election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats. Our country has had enough. They won't take it anymore." Fuck you and your peaceful and patriotic bullshit that they put into the... All right. So those words, march down peacefully and patriotically. And I'm going to go with you. That part. Okay. You're going to walk down peacefully and patriotically. That was not in the original script. It's in the teleprompter, though. So I'm curious at what point this, like, somebody put it in the teleprompter for, as far as the official remarks that had been sent up to Pelosi to let her know what's going to be said, and to law enforcement, to basically, like, give them a heads up. If you're going to say we're going to march, you got to get a permit to march. I don't give a fuck if you are the president. You can't take a large crowd down fucking Pennsylvania Avenue without a parade permit as a campaign, because it's not an official thing. You're not going, as your president, I declare, walk down the street, right? It doesn't work that way. You're campaigning at that point, and it's too fucking late. But he did anyways, and they took it out because they didn't want to give police and everybody the heads up. One of the reasons why they didn't add extra security on January 6th is because he took out the part about them marching down there. Originally, there was this thing, like they were planning. They were actually going to have, and they were like, we have to get a permit if we're going to do that. And they said, take it out. Because does anybody think that if they'd have had a thing in the thing that he was going to lead a bunch of people to the fucking Capitol, do you think there would have been like 65 cops there? For real? Or do you think, oh shit, yeah, we're definitely going to need National Guard. We're going to need the fucking Marines to surround the Capitol to make sure things happen like they're supposed to. Right? That's why they took it out. There's a documentary on fucking on YouTube right now that shows a lot of the extra footage about the people headed there while he's speaking. It's fucking grotesque. Yes, it was meant to be a surprise attack, and that whole like peacefully and patriotically was don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes, because after he was like, when you get down there, if Mike Pence doesn't have the strength to do the right thing, you're going to have to fight and you're going to have to be strong or you won't have a country left. That's what that means. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. And by the way, if they walk down the street and they're not being peaceful and patriotic and they're tearing shit up and setting fucking stuff on fire, by the time they get there, the guard will be up. It's exactly the Deng Xiaoping thing. Hide your strength and bide your time. And then when you show up there, then we'll give you the go. All right. 5:05 p.m., he tweeted, Washington's being inundated. Okay, we read that part. Our country's had enough. They won't take it anymore. We hear you and love you from the Oval Office. Make America great again. And so he's in there listening to these fuckers going, fight, 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 or whatever the shit. Yeah. Thereafter, the defendant continued to fixate on preventing the certification proceeding as described above. He tweeted at 1 a.m. on January 6th and again at 8:17 a.m. After the 8:17 a.m. tweet, the defendant worked on his remarks from the ellipse and planned to include language explicitly putting pressure on Pence regarding the certification until advisors prevailed on him not to. At 11:15 a.m., the defendant called Pence and tried one last-ditch effort to convince him to fraudulently reject or return Biden's legitimate electors. Pence was resolute and unmoved, and the defendant was furious. Immediately after the call, the defendant directed that the original language targeting Pence be inserted in his prepared remarks for the ellipse rally. The defendant then went to the ellipse and delivered a falsehood-laden speech to his angry supporters. By the way, telling them, but there was somebody had slowed down the fucking crowd getting in there, so he had them take down the magnetometers. Now, was that really his reaction to, we need to let people in here and it's taking too long and blah, 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 or is it, we're on a fucking time crunch because these assholes have to march down there and attack the Capitol to pause the counting so that our senators like fucking Ron Johnson and the rest of these assholes that are supporting us have time to kick it back to the false state electors. And this is a plan. This is actually, we're on a fucking schedule, people. Also, why would I want people to know who has weapons and who doesn't? AP News, 819,000 followers, cybersecurity heads say there's no chance a foreign adversary can change the U.S. election results. Yeah, they can't. Absolutely. Again, because we have paper ballots that link to them and they're tied by a UPC symbol and they're tied to the original people and you can randomly call them up. You could do, like random semi-recounts or canvassing where you go, hey, did you vote? Yes. Did you send your vote in by mail? Yes. Okay, we received it. You don't have to tell us, but would you like to tell us what party you voted for or something like that? And they can say it and you can deny or say it because it's your right, but you can say, you can tell them if you want, or you go, we want to verify your signature on this. Can you come down and verify your signature? And people will or say no, and you can't kick them out because they won't come down because you're forcing them to, but you can do this kind of canvas. And that's how we know it wasn't fucking rigged. Okay, now, let's build a gallon. No. Okay, so then, 11:15, they called Pence. Pence was resolute and unmoved. Immediately after the call, the defendant directed that the original language targeting Pence be reinserted. The defendant went to the ellipse, delivered a falsehood-laden speech to his angry supporters. He purposely, singled out Pence by claiming that Pence had the power to overturn the election results which he didn't. And though the defendant stood at the podium with full knowledge that Pence would not do so, gave the crowd false hope that Pence might exercise that power. The defendant told the crowd to saying, we can't let it happen. And then directed his supporters who were angry and motivated by his speech to march to the Capitol. And this march peacefully and patriotically down there. What you do when you get there, just saying, you might want to march peacefully and patriotically. But when you're done marching, it's time to open up a fresh can of whoop ass. And by the way, I would like to say for the record, I make my whoop ass from scratch. I don't go in for all this canned whoop ass. I think that's lame. It's the auto-tune of kicking ass. All right. Anyways, instead of marching with his supporters as he said he would, because he's a fucking liar anyways, the defendant returned to the White House and started chucking ketchup at the walls. He went to the dining room next to the Oval Office and began to watch television coverage of the events at the Capitol. Although the government does not intend to use at trial evidence of the defendant's discussions with White House staff during this time period, because that would be partially official, it provides necessary context. When news broke that rioters had breached the Capitol, the defendant's advisors, including the Deputy White House Counsel, and so urged the defendant to issue a calming message and make efforts to stop the riot. The defendant refused, responding that the people at the Capitol were angry because the election had been stolen. Eventually, all of the defendant's staffers left him alone in the dining room. Fox News continued to report on the growing crisis at the Capitol. It was at that point, alone, watching news in real time and with knowledge that rioters had breached the Capitol building, that the defendant issued the 224 tweet attacking Pence for refusing the defendant's entreaties to join the conspiracy and help overturn the results of the election. 1 minute later, the Secret Service was forced to evacuate Pence to a secure location in the Capitol. Now, I gotta say, I don't know how getting your vice president murdered qualifies as an official duty. Because, again, having a vice president so that there's someone who can take power if something happens to you. Because what happens if you get your vice president killed and then you suffer a massive stroke? Then what? Who's going to take over then? Nancy Pelosi? Are you nuts? Yeah, stolen spelled with 2 L's and an E, which I think is a pastry, right? Yummy. All right. This was roughly 90 minutes after Pence had announced publicly that he would not act unlawfully to overturn the election. The certification proceeding was underway, and the first breach of the Capitol building had occurred minutes before at 2:12 p.m. At that point, the defendant's only hope to disrupt the certification proceeding and retain power was through his angry supporters. The defendant further revealed the private nature of his desperate conduct as a candidate rather than a president in an exchange that the government does not plan to use at trial. He had with an aide shortly after the 2:24 p.m. tweet. So they're not going to use this with the jury. But as far as the judge can know that this is substantive because, you know, he may have immunity, but this goes to motivation. This is his motive. We have proof of his motive. We won't share that, but we will share it with the court. Upon receiving a phone call alerting him that Pence had been taken to a secure location, rushed to the dining room to inform the defendant in hopes that the defendant would take action to ensure Pence's safety. Instead, after delivering the news, the defendant looked at him and said only, "So what?" There's an attack on the Capitol. They have moved Mike Pence to a secure location. And Trump's response, "So what?" Jesus Christ. The dude is like in full Howard Hughes drunk mode. Just like, so fuck him. It's such this like King Lear, like the complete idiot's guide to King Lear. So what? Fuck me. The private, unofficial nature of the 224 tweet contrasts with 2 other tweets the defendant sent during the following hour and a video message he sent 2 hours later, which the government does not intend to introduce at trial. These were official acts and where he was saying stuff as president. Only after advisors had again urged, and by the way, can I just say that the fact that there were, and they can't provide, because of the ruling from the Supreme Court, they can't put his presidential tweets and messages in as evidence that he was committing a crime, technically. But it seems to me that you can say these messages were part of his official stuff. And behind the scenes, he was doing this. So it's like saying a cop cannot be tried for things they are legally doing as a cop. So they get, he's pulling over drivers, right? And so we're going to show that while he was literally helping, acting like he was helping people, he was picking their pocket. And so we're going to show that he used his position to get access to people to steal from them. Right? That seems like that should be possible. But they're not going to use it because they're just avoiding it entirely. They don't want it to be prejudicial, and they want to make sure that that there's a very solid fucking line between that stuff and anything that was done from a campaign standpoint. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, which the government did not intend. Okay. Only after advisors had again urged the defendant to calm matters at the Capitol. The defendant at 2:38 posted, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." Okay, first of all, they weren't peaceful at that point. It was violent. There was no stay peaceful. You know what that is? You know what the stay peaceful part of that is? That is him laying a case for plausible deniability. I had no idea there was violence going on at the White House or at the Capitol. I was in the Oval Office. I was getting reports about people there, but I didn't think they were storming up the steps and stuff like that. But I didn't know that they were being violent. I told them to stay peaceful because I believed they were peaceful at the time. It's the stupidest shit. That's what he's trying to do. I mean, this is just straight up weaponized, ignorance. And it's unreasonable in terms of its plausibility. It's stupid. You're the president of the United States. You have access to more intel. You can look at any fucking camera in the city of fucking DC that you want to any fucking second. So the idea that you don't know what's going on for more than 2 minutes, if you want to find out, you can find out. If you're not asking, you don't want to know. There is no reasonable expectation of plausible deniability when you're the president of the United States and there's an attack happening at the Capitol. No fucking way. The private unofficial nature tweets, only after advisors said again, urged the defendant to calm matters to the Capitol. He said, okay, please support our police. As the violence at the Capitol nonetheless escalated, because it was already happening. The defendant 313 posted, I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order, respect law, and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. Again, no video message, just a tweet, and stay peaceful. It's like he was backdating it before the attack. Didn't it seem like that? Didn't it seem like something that you would post when people were marching towards it before they had breached the Capitol? Wouldn't this be something you would post at like 11 a.m. or noon? See what I mean? All right. Also, you're not the party of law and order. You keep trying to defund the fucking FBI because they want to figure out why Russia backed your loans through Deutsche Bank and the Bank of Cyprus. And after these tweets failed to disperse the rioters, because, again, one of the reasons why everybody wanted him to do a video or go on television and do it is because the rioters, a bunch of them, because they were a bunch of QAnon fuckheads, would have read that and gone, they've taken his account, they're trying to stop us. Like, why would they believe just because it came from his Twitter account that it was actually him posting it? See what I mean? Shit, they could probably say, they'd probably read every letter and go, no violence, anything he says, just do the opposite. More violence. Remember, we're the party of law and order. We are law and order. We are the party of law and order. They're the illegal ones. That's what he really means. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. They were wearing black, dummy. They were black outfits. They weren't in... Back to blue is a fucking figure of speech. The Capitol Riot Police and the Capitol Police themselves were wearing black uniforms. And these assholes thought they were, like a bunch of them, if you listen to some of the Jan 6ers, they thought they were UN shock troops because they're fucking morons. Jesus Christ. Okay. People asked that he do more. The defendant at 4:17 p.m. tweeted a video message in which he finally asked those in the Capitol whom he described as very special and people that he loved to leave the Capitol while claiming that we had an election that was stolen from us. He sent a tweet at 6:01 p.m. that conveyed a similar sentiment. There are things and events that happen when a sacred landslide victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from the great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. Jesus Christ. Like, this was straight up fucking Confederacy shit. Yeah, UN wears light blue. That's true, Mr. WW. Right. This is. I mean, if Twitter was around during the Civil War, this would be the shit that they would like. The South will rise again. It's basically what he's saying. The defendant at least has an argument, although he issued the 2:38 and 3:13 p.m. only after being harangued by his staff while he admittedly refused to do anything at all, that he was addressing a matter of public safety as president, the riot at the Capitol. Likewise, at 4:17 p.m., the defendant, while still focused on his election loss, asked rioters to evacuate the breached Capitol and foreshadowed the sentiment of his 6:01 p.m. tweet when he said to go home with love and in peace, which is so fucking weird. Like his manic bullshit. Sorry, somebody's saying Mueller, she wrote what? Hold on. Mueller, she wrote, wow, the evidence and testimony Jack Smith has is damning. For instance, the government has testimony that Donald said that the voter fraud claims that the details don't matter. There's also testimony that Trump said it didn't matter if he lost, he would just declare he won. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Steve Bannon was saying. That's why he didn't want to testify. That's why he went to jail instead of testifying. Because if Steve Bannon actually is forced to testify and they get his testimony under oath and he actually says what happens, he's going to jail for a long fucking time. Like a few months is dick. You know, as long as everybody's, you know, they hang separately or they hang together. And so they're hanging together. Let's see. Defendant focused on the election, asked riders to go home, blah, blah, blah. By contrast, the defendant focused solely on vice president's role in the certification of the presidential election results, a matter of intense personal concern for the defendant as a candidate for office, even assuming that topic constituted a, quote, matter of public concern. That's his defense. I was just saying because the public really wanted Pence to do this. Fuck you. In an unofficial private capacity as an office seeker, not an official capacity as an office holder. That's the tweet that he said about Pence. Right. Given all this context, the 2:24 p.m. tweet was unofficial. When the defendant sent it, he knew that he had asked what he had asked Pence to do. He claimed would protect our country and our Constitution was contrary to the ECA, and that no state was poised to certify a corrected set of facts. Like that was the other thing too. There were no secondary electors that were real. There were their bullshit electors that they were going to try and sneak in via Ron Johnson, who needs to go to fucking jail too. Period. That fucking guy. Wisconsin, what are you doing? What are you fucking doing, Wisconsin? Jesus. Given all this context, it was unofficial. Gathered Washington is urging that these supporters were angry and believed his false claims that the election had been stolen, that he had called them to action through his ellipse speech, in which he told them that Pence might still do as he wished and directed the supporters to march to the Capitol, and his supporters had done so and breached the Capitol building. The defendant also knew what his advisors were forcefully urging him to do as president, which is different from what he was doing as a private candidate who wanted to stay in power as a man who didn't want to lose because he'd already lost. That's different. It was then that the defendant issued the 2:24 p.m. tweet as a candidate, communicating to his angry supporters that Pence had let him and them down. The context of the content of the 2:24 tweet was not a message sent to address a matter of public concern and ease unrest. It was a message of an angry candidate upon realization that he would lose power. And unlike the defendant's later tweets that day, the defendant was not asking the individuals at the Capitol to remain peaceful, leave the building, or go home. By virtue of his status as a candidate for re-election, the defendant occasionally made public statements, and they go into this too. This is it. These are all the things in his speeches that he would do in parallel. Let's see. Defendant's interactions in his capacity as a candidate with the White House staff. The interactions at issue were unofficial. Now, this is the thing where he doesn't understand the difference between campaign staff and his official, like, Oval Office staff. He makes no distinction. And part of that problem comes from the fact that Donald Trump he's never had a real business. It's always been a family business. He took over his dad's business and drove it into the fucking ground and then turned it into a branding exercise. But the family's the only people involved in it, or people he can hold close, like Alan Weisselberg or fucking Michael Cohen, at least as long as he could. But he never had investors on any meaningful level, except, I guess, the Russians. But that's the other thing. Is this the October surprise? Not quite. I mean, it's not a surprise. And by the way, this shit could have come out 9 months ago. If Donald Trump had, believed in his own innocence about this stuff, he could have just let it come out a long time ago. But they've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing it. And they're the reason why the timing of this is coming out now. Just saying. This is Trump's own doing. All this shit is. Like, they're doing this in the middle of an election. That's because you have, like, the classified documents thing. You fought it for a fucking year. If you hadn't fought it for a year, just turn the documents back over. They wouldn't even know you made fucking copies, asshole. All right. Jesus. Okay. They just have a witness a pertinent private remark by the defendant. Okay. Federal law confirms the defendant's campaign-related conversations with these White House staffers were unofficial. The Hatch Act, and this is the primary act, it's so good because they violated the Hatch Act so many fucking times during his time in the White House on minor campaign-related shit. But this is what the Hatch Act was written for. Right? This is the big shit. These staffers, okay, so we're unofficial. The Hatch Act permits certain White House staffers to engage in political activity while on duty, but prohibits them from using their official authority or influence for the purpose of interfering with or affecting the result of an election. These staffers can thus wear two hats. They can work in their private capacity to advance the interests of a political candidate, including while on official duty, or they can work in their official capacity to carry out executive branch responsibilities, but they may not wear both hats at the same time. This is Kellyanne Conway. Accordingly, when the defendant's White House staff participated in political activity on his behalf as a candidate, they were not exercising their official authority or carrying out official responsibilities. And so in trying not to violate the Hatch Act, because none of these assholes wanted to go to jail, right? None of the people that worked in his cabinet and in his, in the White House wanted to go to jail because they knew the law. They very distinctly drew a line between the shit they were doing that was official government business and the shit they were doing for him as the campaign. And by making those records and officially behaving in that way, they're the ones who codified what was official and what wasn't when Trump would ask him to do things, them to do things, like his social media people. Right? This is a tweet to put out on the POTUS one. This is a tweet for Donald J. Trump, real Donald Trump, right? And so that distinction is an awareness of the law. And so when you put something on that account, but you don't put it on the POTUS account, or you put something specifically on the POTUS account, but you don't put it on the Donald J. Trump one, and your staff does that, and you're directed them, and you know the law, and they know the law, it codifies your guardrails. That's what happened. That's how they know a lot of this stuff. They even had fucking different phones. They had to have they had to use one phone for these kind of contacts and one phone for official White House business. So what do? You get a subpoena for the non-White House phone. And they had, by the way, a subpoena for both. But because of the immunity ruling, they're like, you know what? Anything that's on that phone from the White House, we're not going to touch it. We're only going with the one, and whatever he engaged in on the private one, that's all we give a fuck about. That's what this is. That's him going through, all right, we'll just go through your private email and your private communications that were for the campaign, because anything that's on that is not official, or you wouldn't have put it on that account. You wouldn't run it through that email. You wouldn't have made that. You wouldn't have texted from there. You wouldn't have, and quite frankly, you wouldn't use Signal or fucking Telegram to make sure that, I guess Americans can't read it, but every Russian who wants to can just fucking peruse straight through it. Because again, they were using Telegram a bunch in that White House. And Telegram, the servers are in Moscow. The owner is a fucking Russian. He's in jail in France right now. But it's literally set up so that somebody from the Kremlin can go downstairs and plug in a laptop to it and just go through everybody's fucking messages. So if you use Telegram, guess what? Americans can't see it. The FBI can't see it without a warrant. But the Russians can see all of it. Anything you've ever sent on Telegram, the fucking Kremlin can read it. Welcome to TikTok. Same thing on TikTok. If anything you send on TikTok and receive on TikTok, any message you get on TikTok, the U.S. government would need a warrant to look at that thing. The Chinese government, open up a laptop, tickety-tack, there it is. See how this works? Okay. According to the White House staff, participated in political activity on his behalf of a candidate. They were not exercising their official authority to carry out that. Okay. When the president, acting as a candidate, engaged in campaign-related activities with these officials or in their presence, he, too, was not engaging in official presidential conduct. The precedent from the D.C. Circuit Court confirms that the defendant was not engaging in official presidential conduct when he spoke with the White House staffers about campaign matters. In Ari Lindsay, the D.C. Circuit recognized that senior White House personnel may serve as the president's agents in a personal capacity to act as a conduit for unofficial information from a private party. The D.C. Circuit held that while the president's communications with his personal attorney are fully protected by the absolute attorney-client privilege, a White House lawyer cannot rely on a government attorney-client privilege to shield evidence from the grand jury, because you don't work for him. You work for the taxpayer, and that requires oversight. And oversight means we get to know what the fuck you're doing. There might be guardrails on it again. There might be ways of limiting it, just like you would use a SCIF to look at certain classified documents, or you would have to get certain higher clearance because you're on on a committee or something like that, right? But in this particular case, yeah. Sorry, the fucking White House attorney doesn't work for the president. He works for the taxpayer. He works for the U.S. government. And he has the same rules, for his behavior to defend the country, the Constitution and the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They take the same oath that somebody who becomes a fucking CIA agent does. It's not the same. So, but a White House lawyer may invoke the president's personal attorney privilege when he acts as an intermediary to convey unofficial information from the president to his personal attorney. As the court explained, a president must often rely on aides to communicate with personal advisors, such as personal attorneys, and the involvement of those aides does not alter the personal nature of the underlying communication. So if they carry a message to Rudy Giuliani and Rudy Giuliani carries it back and it's in a personal capacity, then on the one hand, he has the right to attorney-client privilege unless he's engaged in a RICO conspiracy, which he fucking was. But if it gets bust open and it's discovered as a RICO, you can't then hide behind, I was president, this is official. No, asshole, that you are using official aids to pass on personal business, and if your personal business is a crime, fuck you. All right. I love this. This is fucking great. Similarly, in this case, a transmission of private campaign communication by or to the defendant through a White House employee serving as an intermediary did not render that communication official and thereby shield it from use in a criminal trial against the defendant. That's exactly what I was saying. I'm so smart. I'm very smart. I'm a smart boy. You must be a smart boy. I am. In sum, just as the president can at times act in an unofficial capacity, including as a candidate for office or a party leader, Trump, so too can the executive branch staff around him. Simply because a staffer holds a title in the executive branch and interacts with the president does not mean that that interaction is necessarily official. Let me explain. Like, let's say Ronnie Jackson knows full well that Donald Trump does not meet the criteria for combining Adderall and benzodiazepines, and has someone in his office off the books bring him sample packets of it from his pocket to the president. I'm spitballing, I don't know if that could ever happen, but it sounds good. So in that, if he gets busted, why am I getting a bloom? What is my notification coming from? Is that staff chat? Is that what's happening? Or staff chat? Are you talking to me? Is that? I think maybe so. Let's see. Okay. I know that the name of the documentary you spoke of was called Fight Like Hell. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Fight Like Hell is the YouTube documentary, you mean? It very well may be. There's like 2 on there. But yeah, Fight Like Hell is the documentary that they talk about. And it's fucking infuriating. I'll see if I can look it up, and I'll post it on my social medias, because Jesus Christ, it's gross. And these motherfuckers, again, they didn't violate the privacy of any of the Jan 6ers. They didn't have to, because these dumb motherfuckers filmed themselves. They were filmed from multiple goddamn angles. They were fucking, like, they had a phone, their friend had a phone, they're fucking, I'm taking a shit in the rotunda, I just punched a cop, this is cop blood. Like, for fuck's sake. And then there's cameras all over the fucking place because they thought they were gonna win. Roger Stone and Steve Bannon and all these dumb motherfuckers sent their camera boys out to document the whole thing, because it's our new 76. We're going to film this fucking thing. There are a bunch of fucking InfoWars cameras that are going to be auctioned next month, right? And yeah, and they were there at the Capitol. I guarantee there's like at least 5 of them that were there that fucking Alex Jones and his dipshit buddies handed out to each other. that filmed that shit on that day. They didn't have to break into your fucking phone and read your text. They did. You know why? Because they had probable cause. Why? Because they had footage of you going, I took a shit in the rotunda. This is cop blood. We're going to fucking shoot Nancy Pelosi in her fucking dome as soon as we can find her. Hang Mike Pence. Hang my everybody. Hang my, like, hey, dum-dum. And they thought they were going to win, so they didn't wear masks. They wrote it down. They were fucking texting their families. I'm in the Capitol. I'm part of the new revolution. I've just done a series of minor crimes and 2 major ones. Isn't that awesome? Like, Jesus Christ. Did they eventually get that shit? Yeah. Do you have a right to privacy in that situation? No. Because you're in the process of committing a crime, you dumb motherfucker. That's why there's so much, oh God, that's why there's so much goddamn evidence. That's why the FBI was like, we've never had this much evidence. And everybody's like, oh my God, oh, the fucking digital evidence they have. Yeah, it's not because they dug through more people's shit than ever before. It's because there's just so much, there's gigabytes, there's terabytes of footage of these dumb motherfuckers. It's insane. And again, I want to be clear, because I know there's some maggots watching and they get very upset. But I don't believe what happened on January 6th was an insurrection. Okay? All right, you happy now? I don't believe it was an insurrection. I believe it was a failed insurrection. And it would have been an insurrection, but you fucked up. You failed. You lost. You get nothing. Good day, sir. If you win or lose a football game, still a football game, because there's rules and everybody agreed it would happen. Right? But attempted murder isn't a murder, not because you didn't try, because you're a fuck up. All right. So let's get a little bit of this, and then I've got a video. I'll end out the show on a video because I feel like I owe it to you. All right. In sum, as the president can sometimes act as unofficial, blah blah blah. Unless you guys are having a good time, because this is pretty fucking interesting. This is an alt version of the show. I'm reading aloud from the filing from Jack Smith for those of you that are just joining us right now. Let's see, okay, from August 2020 through the end of the defendant's administration. Excuse me, according to the chart that saved Donald Trump's life, if he'd just looked a little bit, and it was obviously God who wanted that fucking firefighter dead, but he wanted Trump's ear winged so he could wear a tampon on his fucking head. Because that's God's plan. If I hadn't turned my head and I looked this way, and if I hadn't, and I don't normally use the chart, but it's my favorite chart and I want to kiss it, I love it. I don't like flies and mosquitoes. Why do we have a fly? I don't like it. All that aside, according to Trump's favorite chart, he stopped being president in April of 2020. You know that chart where he's like, this is the end of Trump's term. Where that arrow is April of 2020. So basically, when COVID hit, Trump gave up. That's why it's his favorite chart. Because it reminds him of a great milestone in his presidency, which is when COVID really hit, he was like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. That's what happened. According to him, April 2020, Trump stopped being president. Fuck him. All right, anyway, but according to this, technically speaking, August through the end of his administration, which obviously is, obviously Jack Smith, who's a very smart man, has figured out how to fold time. Was an assistant to the president, somebody in there, without a defined portfolio. You mean like all the sycophant losers who are hanging around? More importantly, for the court's purposes, during the charge conspiracies, so-and-so, P9, this is the P9 person. So P9 is the person that said, let him riot, let him do it. And he was more, I don't know if it was Eastman or if it was the fucking dude from Overstock.com. But P9 is a villainous fuck. So that whole like, let him riot, do it, is actually a line from this person. But Trump agreed. is the crucial part. A lot of people are like, he didn't say it, this other guy said it. Yeah, and he nodded and went, uh-huh. It's a fucking difference. What's the difference? You can make it happen. You're the person who can make it happen. Let them riot. Do it. Somebody tells you that and you agree to do it. Who gives a shit if you said it? You carried it out. If somebody says, I wish that guy would die, and then you kill that person, who's guilty? Uh-huh. Was an assistant to the president without a defined portfolio. Walt Nada? Right, okay. More importantly, for the court's purposes, during the charged conspiracies, served as a conduit of information from the campaign to the defendant and discussed campaign matters with the defendant. These actions were consistent with in-re Lenzi, unofficial. These are official, unofficial because this person did not have a defined portfolio. He had no other job than to be basically a fucking courier. He was like he's like a slightly smarter, way more evil Carter Page. Can you stay if you can, or continue this? Treva, I'm going to continue looking into this after the show's over tonight because it's a lot. As a part of the immunity analysis, the court should consider multiple different interactions involving this person, none of which bear on his official White House responsibility. A November 13th phone call in which the defendant told them he was to put blank in charge of campaign's legal efforts under an agreement where the defendant would only pay if CC1 were successful. I'm pretty sure that's Rudy Giuliani. CC1 is Rudy Giuliani, pretty sure. And P9 guaranteed the defendant would never have to pay because Rudy Giuliani would never be successful, I guess. A November conversation with the defendant regarding CC3, supervisor, whoever that is, probably a secondary attorney. These seem to be attorneys. An undated conversation in which he told the defendant that CC1 fraud allegations could never be proved in court, and the defendant responded, the details don't matter. That's Trump. Trump said the details don't matter. Because, again, this is a show. And I would harken this back to Bush v. Gore. Because after the final count was done, Gore won Florida by 500 votes. But the country had already moved on. And that's what Trump was counting on. A bigger, more violent version of Bush v. Gore. By the time they realize we lost, it's too late. I'm already sworn in again. Fuck you. You can't do anything about it. That's what he was shooting for. Figuratively and specific. Okay. No, there is a campaign. Guaranteed to never pay. Defendant regarding a November conversation with the defendant regarding CC3. And yeah, details wouldn't matter. A November or December 2020 conversation on which P9 explained to the defendant why one of his fraud claims was bullshit. A late December exchange with the defendant regarding the verification of CC2 wanted him to sign in Trump v. Kemp. Maybe this is actually one of his actual attorneys, and it isn't the person who said riot, let him do it. This seems to be maybe that person was quoting Trump. Okay, includes action by P9 that do not reflect any presidential conduct under the defendant who was not involved. These include December 3rd text messages that P9 exchanged with P21 regarding CC1, false fraud claims at a Georgia legislative hearing. Okay, CC1 is Giuliani. And December 13 text messages P9 exchanged with campaign personnel regarding the fraudulent elector scheme. The content of P9 communications with the defendant enumerated above involved the defendant's campaign, including status, viability of the defendant's fraud claims, the quality of advice the defendant was receiving, and his campaign advisors. That means this person was telling him it ain't happening. You think it's Mark Meadows? It's not Barr. And Mark Meadows had an official job. So it might have been, it's hard to say. Maybe it was Satan, right? Proposed appendix to reject this. None of the communications pertain to general election policy issues or considerations, Justice Department, criminal investigations, executive branch functions, or any other presidential responsibilities. As context for all these communications, the court should consider their relationship with the defendant, his role in the White House, and his interactions with the campaign. P9 relationship with the defendant and his family pre-existed his position in the White House and presented the defendant in his impeachment trial. Represented the defendant in his impeachment trial. So it's not Dershowitz, is it? Didn't have a defined portfolio and worked on matters. Jonathan Turley? Is it Meadows? We're sure? I mean, yeah. Because he'd already bounced him, though, right? Defensive impeachment result did not have a defined portfolio, worked on matters related to the Justice Department, including, and I don't think Mark Meadows had a previous relationship with them per se. Dershowitz did. Giuliani did. Turley may have. Chesbrough? Yeah. Could be Chesbrough. Well, did he? I know Eastman didn't. Chesbrough could have been. Mike Pillow? Yeah. We'll see. If anybody knows, hey, staff chat, anybody see anything in the news? Because people are breaking this down. Who P9 might be? Let's see. Represented in the impeachment trial. Did not have a defined portfolio, blah, 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 including Portland riots and Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, as well as Middle East issues and pardons. All right. The government does not intend to elicit specific information about communications P9 had with the defendant regarding his official duties, because there aren't any. Was not acting in an official capacity during the conversations enumerated above, but as a conduit for the information from the campaign. Contact with the campaign began in October 2020 when he asked campaign staffers P3 and P72 for a tutorial on campaign basics and operations. He continued to talk to P3 and P72 leading up to the election to understand Navarro. Peter Navarro? Yeah, great gut feel. It's not Kushner. Yeah, it's not Kushner. Hirschman? That's a possibility too. Yep. Let's see. Shortly thereafter, in November 2020, P9 asked P77, who handled ethics issues in the White House, that person was busy, for permission to engage with the campaign. Thereafter, P9 began frequent contact with campaign staff. So P77 is the person that they interviewed who signed off on P9 talking to them, meaning that they did not have an official capacity and that they could do it. Boris Epstein, that makes sense. Yeah. P9 began frequent contact with campaign staff several days after the election, went to the campaign headquarters in Virginia for the first time, while P2, CC1, P56, CC3, P10, P48, and P12 were there too. As discussed, Supra, blah, blah, blah. Likely the same day he went to the campaign headquarters, P9 joined campaign officials, including 2, 3, and 4, at the White House to discuss the defendant, the fact that networks that morning had projected Biden as the winner. Okay, so that's like his attorneys. There was fucking... Sidney Powell might have been 3 or 4, right? Wasn't Ginny Thomas. Yeah. P9 is Hunter's laptop. Who is P9? Who is P9? The campaign staff told the defendant his chance of victory was slim. Also participating in various Oval Office meetings with the defendant, Pence, White House staff, campaign officials, and P39. The defendant heard and mentioned to P9 and others various fraud allegations throughout the post-election period, sometimes from his outside attorneys like CC1, CC3. And CC1's definitely Rudy Giuliani. I'm going to guess 3 is fucking Sidney Powell. That makes sense. Consistent with this, 9 asked 3 and 72, if certain fraud allegations were accurate so that he could challenge information provided by the defendant by people like CC1, CC3. Okay, so this sounds like one of the actual lawyers in there. So there's no fucking way P9 was the one that said, let him riot, if that's who we think it is. Okay, here we go. Overall, P9 served as a conduit of day-to-day information between 22 and the defendant during the post-election period. 22 testified that around the time CC1 was named to lead legal efforts, I was introduced to P9 and I started predominantly reporting to P9. He elaborated that P9 started to call me more and more. It would be, you know, once every couple of days. Then it was kind of every day for a period of time. I was like, I was talking to P9 with this information on a daily basis. P9 attempted to debunk the false fraud allegations in the White House. For example, after watching P74 testify, it wasn't John Dean. It was like, it sounds like his White House counsel. It wasn't Cassidy Hutchinson. Through the channel, learned about this fascinating though, that no substantial fraud allegations were supported. Essentially in real time, P9 also participated in calls with C1, had the number of one of the managing directors, P75, in his cell phone. and spoke to the defendant, explained how the legal system worked, and the campaign, not the Justice Department, was responsible for filing election challenge lawsuits. Throughout the conversations, even if P9 could be understood to have been acting on an official capacity, which he was not, rather than a campaign one, the defendant was himself acting in his private capacity as a candidate. The defendant was asking for P9's view on various strategic decisions he was making regarding his campaign and his private attorneys, and he was getting reports from P9 on information related to actual and potential election challenges important to his candidacy and private campaign. All of this context established that both P9 wore two hats, one official, one private, and that the defendant interacted with P9 in these conversations. Okay, so they're establishing who this P9 person is and what they did. P45 served as assistant to the president, White House deputy chief of staff. He also volunteered his time for the campaign work. So there's a lot of overlapping people in this. And so they establish, it seems like this is all establishing documents about who this person is and the fact that why they can make the case that this person, why this person can be brought to, to testify. Pat Cipollone, that's a possibility. Let me do something real quick here. I want to go to, let's go the word, I'm going to look at the word riot. Where is this? I'm going to go all the way up here. Several rioters, because I think this is relatively early. I want to say it's like page 8 or something, where the whole like riot thing happened. Page 8 or 9, where is it? No. I'm gonna go up to the top of this. Start up here, and then I'll 2 of 15. Okay, jump in here. Fueling the ongoing riot. And maybe it's later. Maybe it's near the end. Yeah. So rioters again, rioters again, rioters again. Riot, riot, riot. Video of the riot. Let's go down to here. Okay, there's one here. There's one here. Where's the word? Because maybe it's down here. This would be very special people that he loved. Riot at the Capitol. Rioters. Riot at the Capitol. Very special. Riot. Riot. Rioters. Let's see. Maybe I can actually find it with the do it. Maybe not. Okay. Never mind. Yeah. There might be a page in here that I'll have to dig up where that whole like do it thing happened. Here, fuck. I'm gonna hold on, chat room. Join me for 1 second. I'm going to jump in here real quick and go to X and do a search for, because people have put this online, and I want to look at this whole like do it, not gonna do it, gonna try to do it. No one can Trump this new Jack Smith documents released by Judge Chutkin say that leading up to the violence January 6th, the Trump campaign literally said, yeah, that's okay. That's a video of it. Absolutely insane. Design P6, P7. Show the whole page, you pricks. Trying to find the full page on it. Okay, here you go. Page 8 of 165. Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Make them riot, do it. Do it. Make them riot, Gonna do it. Wanted to do it, not gonna do it. I'm gonna find here you go. Yeah, here you go. So this is the actual page. Yeah, okay, hold on. Go back to here. This is page 8 of 165. This is what we're seeing a lot of. Yeah, it could be Pat Cipollone. Pat Cipollone was a take no shit kind of a guy. Oh, yeah, P5 responded. There we go. That's why. In the immediate post-election period, while the defendant claimed fraud without proof, his private operatives sought to create chaos rather than seek clarity at polling places where states were continuing to tabulate votes. For example, on November 4th, P5, a campaign employee, agent and co-conspirator of the defendant, trying to sow confusion when the ongoing vote count at the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan looked unfavorable for the defendant there. When a colleague at the TCF Center told P5, "We think a batch of votes heavily in Biden's favor is right," P5 responded, "Find a reason it isn't. Give me options to file litigation, and even if it is." When the colleague suggested that there was about to be unrest reminiscent of the Brooks Brothers riot, a violent effort to stop the vote count in Florida in the 2000 election, P5 responded, "Make them riot and do it." The defendant's campaign operatives and supporters used similar tactics at other tabulation centers, including Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the defendant sometimes used the resulting confrontations to falsely claim that the election observers were being denied proper access, thus serving as a predicate for the defendant's claim that fraud must have occurred in the observers' absence. So it's P5 is the person we're talking about, because P9 does sound like one of the legit people. Holy shit. Okay, hold on one second. Yeah, let's see if there is anybody know who is P5? Oops, sorry. Who is P5? All right. Lots of clues as to who redacted people use. Everybody wants to know who P5 is. Plenty accurate listing. Reply below. There you go. Jack Smith filing. Make them riot. Okay, P5 is not Trump. No, of course not. Plenty of damning evidence in there, but there's being misquoted. Right. Anybody who's P5 is in the Jack filing, that's what everybody's asking. And it's somebody else who's been indicted. Yeah. Yeah, that's what everybody's asking online. Okay, who's the latest? The latest on this? Let's see. Bannon, Stone, Giuliani. Roger Stone seems like the closest, but Stone wasn't dissuading him at all. Right? But like later. Yeah. P5 is, yeah. Jason Miller's a possibility. Sorry, this P5, who is Mike Roman, the Philly campaign? That's not him. He was somebody in the White House with everybody else. Yeah, that's going to be the big question. And because P5 is going to be indicted alongside Trump. I'm looking for it right now. I think Boris Epstein is a really good possibility, except Boris is a little more cautious. Navarro wasn't given that kind of power. It does seem very Bannon or Roger Stone, though. Right? It sounds like something. Michael Roman, you think so? Put the board up to make all those connections. That's right. I'm not going to go Glenn Beck on this shit. Yeah. So this is hold on one second. This is just trying to jump over here. This is a list of the people that people kind of know. So Steve Bannon's supposed to be P1. Stepien's 2, possibly John Pence. Stepien was one of the attorneys that was like, no bullshit. Kind of like Pat Cipollone was 9. 8 with Mark Meadows. They don't know who. There's 2 6s. Why are there 2 6s? What's going on here? Dun, dun, dun. I would have expected 3. CC1 is Rudy Giuliani. Doug Ducey's P16. Brian Kemp's P17. Jared Kushner's P13. I'm going to guess the other ones are like fucking Lindell and what's her name? Sidney Powell. You know, in the CC's. And is it like, and whatever, the married couple. Remember them? That showed up for him that were there for like a day and a half? So, yeah. Bunch of shit. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Jesus. So much stuff to this. Bill Barr's not an option because whoever that person is was a campaign staffer with no particular job. And then, let's see, telling the significant Dawn campaign speech from the ellipse speech delivered just 2 days later. Okay, here we go. Tellingly, okay, here's the difference between the speeches that he gave. is one of the big things. The defendant's appearance was consistent with the campaign rally, not an official event. This is why the ellipse speech and everything about it was a campaign speech, not a official duties. Okay, it's kind of crucial. So let's go back to here. And why does this shrink you down? Why would you do such a thing? You craziness. There we go. Let's see. The day of logistics of the Save America rally further indicate its private nature. No other executive branch officials spoke. Instead, other speakers included WFAF officials, the defendant's political allies, 2 U.S. representatives, and the defendant's co-conspirators, private attorneys, and CC1 and CC2. That's got to be Eastman's got to be 2, right? Because Rudy Giuliani and him spoke together. They were on stage together. There's private attorneys. CC2 is Eastman. Yeah, I think we can put a pin in that one. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Victoria Tensing and what's her name? Husband's name? Anyways, those two specifically seem like they'd be 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 or some shit like that, or 3 and 4. Yeah. Moreover, the defendant's appearance was consistent with a campaign rally, not an official event. The crowd at the rally consisted of the defendant's political supporters who held signs and wore clothing bearing the defendant's campaign slogans. And the manner in which the defendant took the stage at the rally was also consistent with his campaign rallies. Instead of entering a military band played Hail to the Chief, as he might in an official event, the defendant entered and exited the ellipse speech that day he used throughout his campaign, Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA and the Village People's YMCA, which has to do with USMCA because he's that fucking stupid. Yeah, George DeGeneva, yeah, and Victoria Tensing, they're the couple, right? Jeffrey Clark, yeah, Clark was no, he wasn't present in that part of it. He would have had a different. They tried to give him official duties. He's in there somewhere, but tellingly, the significant similarities with the defendant's Dalton campaign speech confirm that the ellipse speech, delivered just 2 days later, was private partisan electioneering. The defendant covered many of the same topics and told many of the same lies about fraud in only his election. In some cases, using the exact same words. For instance, I ran 2 elections. I won both of them. Second one was much more successful than the first. I've been in 2 elections. I won them both. And the second one, I won much bigger than the first. The defendant, as a candidate, the leader of the political party, implored political supporters to pressure Pence. I hope Mike Pence comes through for us. I have to tell you, I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much. And then at the ellipse, I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so, because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. The defendant, as a candidate and the leader of the political party, attacked a fellow party member who'd been insufficiently subservient. Governor Kemp was an incompetent governor, and he said one of the dumbest governors in the United States. Okay, he's very repetitive in his stuff, anyways. But that's the whole point. They were like, "This is a campaign speech. It's almost the exact same thing, word for word. Very little changed. Even his ad libs." Let's see, I'm not happy with the Supreme Court. They're not stepping up to the plate. They're not stepping up. I'm not happy with the Supreme Court. They love to rule against me. That's, again, him bitching about Amy Coney Barrett, who was a heat-seeking missile for Roe and didn't give a shit about him after that. She's got a legacy worth protecting that's stronger than his. So she doesn't need him. That's his problem with his Supreme Court justices. It's a problem, quite frankly, with any president, Supreme Court justices. I don't care who the fuck you are as president. They're going to outlast you. They're going to be there long after you're gone. Because that's how their gig works. Theirs is for life. Yours is max 8 years. The defendant, as a candidate, made myriad false claims regarding fraud in the presidential election, including Arizona, Georgia. Right. We saw this is his speech, and they're comparing what he said in that speech versus the previous speech, and then tweets about it, and and the distinction between those two things. So. He announced over Twitter that CC1 and others were taking over his campaign legal team, and he repeatedly used the platform to espouse false claims of election fraud and promote political rallies on his behalf. P45, the defendant's deputy chief of staff, is the only person other than the defendant with control over the real Donald. Oh, that's Dan Scavino. P45 is Dan Scavino. Yeah. Because he tweets on his behalf. That was famously his gig. Remember those articles about how, like, Dan Scavino has really has the misspelling and the caps and all that shit down, so he can sound as dumb as Trump, right? He's not allowed to do any covfefe stuff, but he can, He can go fake news, whatever, and exclamation point, MAGA. Right, that's Scavino. He can also dictate to Scavino, and Scavino can clean it up. So that's what they're talking about. P45 is Scavino. Nailed that. Good. Okay. Knowledge that sometimes consulted with campaign personnel about material he was going to post on the account, that he worked as a volunteer for the defendant's campaign, and at the same time he served as deputy chief of staff, that he had he had not differentiated between his official and campaign duties, and when he would send tweets on the account for campaign purposes as a campaign volunteer. Huh? The defense campaign at the same time that he served as deputy, and that he did not differentiate between his official and campaign duties when he would send tweets on the account for the campaign. Okay, a review of the defendant's official POTUS 45 account presents a relevant contrast. The defendant used his institutional account primarily to retweet other accounts like real Donald Trump account, as well as White House. There were 74 tweets from that account during the charged conspiracies. None of them include the defendant's election-related claims or his election challenges. And that's what I was talking about. Like even his staff is trying to protect him by separating these two things. But in doing so, protecting themselves, in doing so, they also incriminated him because he clearly was doing unofficial duties. This immunity shit does not work on anything that you weren't doing as president or isn't part of your official duties. And because you differentiated him, because of the Hatch Act and because of campaign finance law and all kinds of other shit, you got to use two separate microphones. It's like Trump and his idea that he wanted two desks in his office so he could do business on one desk and presidential shit on the other. Same thing. He was aware. Oh, God. That in and of itself is proof that he knew that he had to separate those two things, that he was doing official and unofficial duties. The fact that he would talk about having two desks, or that you could have two desks, or you could do both things in the White House and keep them separate, was an admission. It's so awesome. Jack Smith's people who watched my show, I would recommend tossing that in there. Put in there, like, he would make remarks about how he should have two desks so he could do business on one, and president. He was aware that there had to be separation in certain areas, and that even if it was cursory, you had to do it. And that awareness means he knows he was committing a crime when he didn't, or that he was actually not engaging in official duties when he was doing that other shit. You're welcome. I'll do what I can. Hold on. Somebody was like, wait, where's this? Where you go? What you doing? Where'd the thing go? There you go. Ah, yeah, there we go. Let's see. I'm going to do this. Right. Okay, here we go. So, below, the government analyzed the content, form, and context of various categories of defendants' tweets. So they specify, these are professional, these are campaign, these are governmental. And the only ones that are covered by immunity are the government ones. Everything else is fair fucking game. And this guy committed most of his crimes out in the open on that other shit, including his false claims of election fraud and all that kind of shit. Yeah.